2026 energy collapse, Trump's airstrikes, and the end of diplomacy. Main heading: the 8 weeks countdown. The crisis was inevitable. Subtext: this isn't just a war; it's about energy and survival. Most people think what's happening in Iran is just another conflict, but it is not. This didn't start yesterday. It has been building for years, and now it is finally exploding. This isn't just about politics. It's about energy, power, and survival. And if this continues, the impact won't stay in Middle East. It will reach countries like South Korea in just weeks. Conflict was always going to happen. Main heading: why this subtext is not random, is built over decade. Here is the part most people completely miss. This conflict didn't just happen. It was building for decades. 3 forces haven't been quietly staking up: history, religion, and geography, each one adding pressure, and when those pressures combine, they don't disappear, they explode. That's why traditional diplomacy keeps failing, because you're not dealing with normal conflict. You're dealing with something that's been building under the surface. Main heading: how Trump changed the rules of power. Subtext: this isn't diplomacy anymore, it's leverage. Now, here's where things get even more important, because this isn't just about conflict. It's about who controls the outcome. And this is where Donald Trump comes in. Trump didn't play by traditional rules. He didn't really on alliance. Very important. He focused on power, especially energy power. One location becomes critical: the Strait of Hormuz. This is where a huge portion of the world's oil passes through. Control this, and you control global energy flow. And Trump understood this. Instead of trying to stop the crisis, he positioned the U.S. to benefit from it. That's real politics, not preventing chaos, but using it. Main heading: what happens to Korea when energy stops. Subtext: this is where everything becomes real. Now, let's make this real. What happens if energy supplies suddenly stops? For countries like South Korea, this is critical, because Korea depends heavily on imported energy, and if the flow is disrupted, the countdown begins. Factories slow down, shipping delays, price surge, and within weeks, entire industries start to shut down. This is the 8 weeks scenario talks about, not a theory, but a real risk. And it doesn't stop at Korea, Japan, Europe, global market. everything gets affected. All over the world. Main heading, what happened next? And what did this matters? Subtext, this is not the end, this is the beginning. Everything we talked about today, this is just the beginning. The situation is still developing, and the real question is, what happens next? Because if this continues, the 8 weeks scenario won't just be a possibility. It could become reality. That's why understanding this is no longer optional. It's necessary. I have put together a deeper analysis, a full breakdown of how this could unfold, but more importantly, what you should watch next, because this crisis isn't isolated, is part of a bigger shifting global power. And in the next video, we were going to break down who benefits from this and who loses everything. Main heading, this isn't just Iran. This is a global power game. Subtext, what you are seeing in part of something much bigger. Up to now, that might look like a regional conflict, but it's not. This is part of a much bigger game, because behind Iran, there are larger powers watching closely, and in some cases, positioning themselves. This is where global competition comes in, not just in the Middle East, but between major world powers, the US, China, Russia, each with different interests, different strategies, and conflict like this can shift the balance not always directly, but through influence, pressure, and positioning. So what looks like the local crisis can actually shape global power. Main heading, when diplomacy ends, wars begin. Subtext, this is where everything escalated. Up to now, this might look like a regional conflict. It is not. This is part of a much bigger game. It goes behind Iran. There are no larger powers watching closely, and in some cases, positioning themselves. This is where global competition comes in. Not just in the Middle East, but between major world powers, the US, China, Russia, each with different interests, different strategies, and conflicts like this can shift the balance, not always directly, but through influence, pressure, and positioning. So what looks like a local crisis can actually shape global power. The main heading, the world is changing fast. Subtext, old rules don't apply anymore. Now stop back for a moment. What we were seeing here is not just one crisis. It's a shift in how the world works. For a long time, global systems relied on cooperation, alliance, agreements, shared rules, but that's changing. More and more countries are acting based on immediate national interests, not long-term consensus, not global stability. But short-term advantage, and when that happens, the system becomes less predictable, more understandable, more reactive, which means conflicts don't just stay local, they spread faster and escalate quicker. This is the new environment we are entering, and understanding it is the only way to stay ahead. Main heading: From Talks to Action, a new area of power. Subtext: the rules of changing and fast. Now let's look at what's changing. In the fast global conflicts, we are often handled through talks and negotiations, summits, agreements, diplomatic signals, but that approach is becoming less dominant. We are seeing a shift from long discussions to faster, more direct actions, not just coordination. But independent decision making, and this changes everything, because when countries act faster with fewer country constraints, the system becomes unpredictable, alliance becomes less stable, decisions happen quicker, and conflicts escalate more easily. This doesn't just affect one region, it affects the entire global system. And in this environment, uncertainty becomes the new normal.